Donald Trump has been going ham with his nominations for his cabinet. According to reports, he's just sitting in Mar-a-Lago, basically talking with Elon Musk, being like, all right, this one. And we've had so many wild nominations.
Wild, okay? Matt Gaetz, Attorney General. Tulsi Gabbard, Intelligence. Dr. Oz, leading Medicare, Medicaid.
RFK.
As Health and Human
HHS.
Services. This is bad, okay?
Yeah. Wild is too kind of a term. Ridiculous.
Yeah,
is the way to put
ridiculous,
it.
unserious, bad, failure,
Yes.
scary. Those are the words that we need to be using to describe what is going on right now as our government gets hollowed out by deep incompetence that is being rewarded because Donald Trump is fostering an aura right now around him where incompetence gets you up the chain. The only thing that gets you up is not merit, not smarts, not ability, it's loyalty.
And it's funny how those two things can kind of be intertwined, right? Because if someone is competent and they have some level of respect for the job, respect for the field, it makes sense that maybe they are much more likely to defer to that thing, to their prior experience and education,
of course,
than they are to the whims of Donald Trump.
Great example, FDA. Okay, the Federal Drug Administration, their job is to look at stuff from a data-driven perspective and make the best determinations of what's good for our health. Okay, well, what happens when Donald Trump has some business lackey who has an interest in one drug being approved versus another? At that point, when that starts happening, when he starts pushing hydroxychloroquine, he wants someone in that position that's going to be influenced by his influence.
Yeah.
And if you have an FDA driven by data, driven by science, you will not be able to exert that influence. And that person will be looking like disloyal to Trump when actually the loyalty doesn't lie with any individual at all. It lies with the institution and the process itself in which he's trying to break and put himself as the only deciding factor.
This is a big reason why Trump's first administration wasn't so damaging, is because he could go into his press briefing room and be like, yeah, I've been taking hydroxychloroquine. I think it's been doing really, really good job for me. And the people in the FDA, since he hadn't hollowed it out and replaced it only with people who are loyal to him, would kind of roll their eyes at it and continue doing their job exactly as they were supposed to be doing. But now that's at risk, and that can cause actual problems.
Actual damages. And so Donald Trump is appointing absolutely idiots to these positions who have no experience, okay? We're going to do deep dives on a lot of these nominees. We're not going to do deep dives on all of them, okay? So one example, Lee Zeldin. We're not going to do a deep dive on him. He is now the leader of the EPA. Lee Zeldin has never led any environmental protection agency under any circumstance. He has never done anything to advocate for the environment except a couple things with the coastal lines of Long Island. He has no experience. The most amount of people he's ever led in his entire life was his congressional staff of 12 people. Now he leads the EPA of thousands of scientists.
Yeah.
Okay. Now, in addition to all this, okay, okay, where am I going with this? I'm going with the fact that he does not have any of the policy experience that Joe Biden's nominees have brought to the table.
Oh, yeah.
Joe Biden's EPA head started working in the EPA in 1998, worked there until 2008. Then he Then he opened up his own defense fund for the environment. Then he ran the EPA for North Carolina. Then he became the EPA head of the country. That's the normal track record of somebody that's going to lead the EPA head. Not somebody like Lee Zeldin, who was a county level elected official and then a House of Representatives official and then a failed governor, a failed run for the governor's office to the EPA. No, the only thing that he's proven effective at is sucking Donald Trump's cock. That's the only, that's pretty rough, but that's the only thing that he's proven effective at his entire career.
I mean, that's kind of the connective tissue between these nominees, right?
Yes.
They're great at pleasing Donald Trump, and it makes sense to me. Then that's why so many of his appointees are either politicians or business people, because they haven't had to. They haven't developed decades of expertise to dedicating their lives to something that is not Donald Trump, and the people who would be, like, they are not ready to sacrifice their reputation in their field to become whatever Trump wants them to become.
That's exactly right.
I feel like Matt Gaetz being nominated as the Attorney General is the perfect example of this. I mean, we'll go into Gaetz in a separate video. There are a lot of reasons for that, but he is technically a lawyer, but he's barely practiced law at all.
Yeah.
And it's just that since he can technically fill the role, Trump can use him and rely on his loyalty to block anything that might come after Trump.
Of course, and Matt Gaetz never achieved or earned anything in his entire life. He's a fail son whose daddy gave him everything he ever had, okay?
That's true.
His dad was worth like $400 million. His dad was a state senator from Florida, and then he becomes a state. Like, come on. What are we doing electing these people and just rewarding their terrible, awful behavior?
Yeah.
Another example of Donald Trump picking the absolute, like this is an example of Donald Trump not picking experts for roles that need experts, okay? He just named Dr. Oz. We're not going to do a whole episode on him. He just named Dr. Oz to lead the Medicaid and Medicare office. Okay, I just did a quick Google search because one of the things about government is over the last couple of years is that it's been boring, and we haven't had to know who leads the Medicare and Medicaid office because it's just worked. It's just operated. And we've had people in power of these positions that have just ran it because they've known how to ran it.
Sure.
So we don't know their names.
Yeah. I mean, it's just the executive branch executing the law where the law hasn't had any huge changes and there hasn't been crazy interpretations to the law that they needed to execute.
Exactly. So I want to give you an example of who Joe Biden nominated to lead the Medicare Medicaid office. Okay, Shakita Brooks LaSure. Okay, this woman earlier in her career was assisting House leadership in passing several healthcare laws, the Medicare Improvements of Patient and Providers Act of 2008, and the Affordable Care Act, as part of the Democratic staff for the U.S. House of Representatives Ways and Means Committee. She also began her career at the Office of Management and Budget, coordinating Medicaid policy development for the Health Financing Branch. Her role included evaluating policy options and briefing White House and federal agency officials on the policy recommendations with regards to the uninsured, Medicaid, and the Children's Health Insurance Program. She was named one of the top 100 most influential global leaders in health. That's the person who should be leading the Medicare Medicaid office,
Totally.
not Dr. Oz. Yeah. And it's crazy to me that I have to sit here and think and act like this other political party that's out there is normal. We're nominating TV hosts to lead the army. We're nominating TV hosts to lead the Medicare industry. What are we doing, people? Why are people not more upset about this?
Well, this is where I want to go with this now. There are two places, and you segue it perfectly into how Trump supporters are excited about these nominations because a shakeup of the system is exactly what they're looking for. And so weirdly, us as the opposition are in a place where good things can happen for us.
Yeah.
In that either they aren't as bad as we think they're going to be, and it remains more boring than we expect. Politics remains more boring than we expect.
Hopefully.
And that is what we want. That makes our lives and everyone's lives in the country better.
Yes.
On the flip side, it is exactly the disaster we expect, and it reflects horribly on the administration.
Absolutely.
And if I expect, or at least hope, that some people will be snapped out of the trance of what would be so good about a shakeup of the government if more and more of these things, if his nominations to the executive branch start to actually touch their lives.
Absolutely. During the New Deal, the House Majority Leader, his name, the Speaker of the House, Sam Rayburn, okay, he said, classic line of government, takes a jackass to knock a barn over, but it takes a carpenter to build one up. We're putting jackasses in power, and we shouldn't be shocked when they start bucking and the whole building starts shaking, and we got to start hiring a carpenter again because a bunch of people didn't realize that Donald Trump was actually going to do the things he said he was going to do. Yeah. He is going to take away regulations around raw milk. He is going to go after his political opponents with the Department of Justice. Yeah. He's literally putting his own defense attorneys into key aspects of power in the Department of Justice.
It's nuts.
He's going to make Medicare and Medicaid worse by putting in someone like Dr. Oz, who has never worked in healthcare administration in his entire life.
Yeah.
These are bad things. Maybe a part of me is excited for some moderate Republicans or independents who voted for Donald Trump, hoping he would bring egg prices down. And then they see all this crazy banana horse shit and they're like, oh my God, what the hell did I just do? Why did I do that?
Yeah.
And I'm hoping that's the reaction to Donald Trump literally nominating a pedophile to lead the Department of Justice.
We'll see. Sorry, I have a few more things.
Oh, yeah, please go.
I have two more things, I think. One is I want to point out that this is strategic. It's funny, my therapist actually pointed this out in my appointment with him. That it's strategic to make all of these nominees as crazy as they are and as rapid fire as they are, because it's going to desensitize us. I'm already largely desensitized to it because things can't get really. It seems like things can't get much crazier than they already are.
It can, buddy.
But anyone who reads these things and who is part of the opposition, I think the goal here is to try to deaden you a little bit, to de-energize you. The other point I want to make is about Senate confirmation.
Yes, that's a good point.
This is an actual question, right? We're talking about how ridiculous these nominations are, and yet they have to pass the Senate for the Senate confirmation process with a majority. They need 50 votes from senators. Right now, it looks like the Democrats are going to hold at least 47, maybe 48 seats in the Senate.
God willing.
That means only 3 or 4 Republicans will have to vote with the Democrats against Trump's nominations to prevent them from getting confirmed. What do you think the odds are that some of these people get blocked?
Okay, I think Donald Trump knows that all these guys aren't going in.
Really?
I think Donald Trump is already knowing that a lot of these guys aren't going to make it. One example, I do not think Matt Gaetz will make it. Okay. I think Matt Gaetz is a train wreck. We'll go into a whole video about him. I don't think he's going to make it. I don't think Tulsi Gabbard's going to make it.
Okay.
We'll make a whole video about that. I don't think she's going to make it.
Pete Hegseth?
He might make it, which is a nightmare.
That is maybe the scariest one.
That is a nightmare.
Okay.
That I think he might make it. But I want to talk about, what's interesting is Republicans still don't have a spine. Okay. That's not the interesting part of the story. Donald Trump wanted Rick Scott to be the Senate Majority Leader. Okay. He wanted Rick Scott, senator from Florida, because Rick Scott has proven undying loyalty to Donald Trump.
Yeah.
John Thune also ran for Senate Majority Leadership in the Republican caucus. He ended up winning. And John Thune and Donald Trump have never gotten along, ever. Because John Thune is an establishment Republican. And so for all the fiery rhetoric coming out of Senate Republicans, when it went behind closed doors and they got to vote on a secret ballot, they picked John Thune. And I think what that means is that Senate Republicans are lying to their base about how crazy and fiery they actually are. And I think that you're going to see a good amount of that when they start voting down Tulsi Gabbard. Really? And they start voting down Matt Gaetz, because these people are beyond the pale of acceptable.
So the Senate confirmation votes will not be secret ballots.
No, they will not.
Does that worry you at all?
Yeah, it does worry me.
Because
it worries me a good amount.
The public statements and the public appearances of all of these senators have still had to be fealty to Trump.
Yes.
So I think I'm mostly with you on Gaetz. And again, we'll get into that and the reasons why in our video about him. Subscribe if you want to see that. I'm really concerned for the other ones.
Yeah.
Because I'm sure they're thinking that all Trump needs right now is another scapegoat to put the blame on. And I think some of these senators are going to think, if I'm the next so-called rhino, I'm out of here.
Yeah. Well, we can go down the numbers. Lisa Murkowski. Lisa Murkowski will not be voting for Tulsi Gabbard.
Yes.
Or Matt Gaetz. Okay. She's senator from Alaska. Susan Collins. Susan Collins is a Republican from
Maine. Doubt it.
She has tried her best to stay moderate, even though she voted for the confirmation of Kavanaugh and all the rest. She is going to be in a tough re-election fight in 2026. Okay. She probably will not. Then it comes down to 2 more. And I don't know who.
Yeah.
I don't know who. I don't. But my point is, I think one thing that I think John Thune is going to allow the senators wiggle room because John Thune as leader is not going to tie them to a leash of Donald Trump
Got it.
the way that Rick Scott would.
So
and I
you
think John Thune is going to give them the wiggle room to vote their conscience.
I
And I
see.
think he will say things like that.
Okay.
I don't think John Thune is going to whip the senators in line behind
and going to
Donald.
go to the press and be like, we're one
He's
party.
not
We
going
need
to do
to
that.
be unified.
He's not going to do that
Okay.
against a lot of these people. He's not going to. He's not going to do that with Robert F. Kennedy Jr. He's not doing that. You know.
Okay.
But
That's encouraging.
But then Donald Trump has gone full fascist, and I don't use that word lightly, guys. I really don't. Donald Trump is asking the Senate to do something that it has never done in its entire history. It is asking the Senate to go on recess for a 30-day period so Donald Trump can appoint all of his cabinet officials through something called a recess appointment. And a recess appointment guarantees that that person who is nominated during the recess is in office for about 2 years. So I think it's like a year and a half after the legislative session or whatever it is. It's like 2 years. So by 2026. So he's asking the Senate to disband on its own accord and let me do whatever the hell I want. And then he goes on Truth Social attacking the Senate for not doing that. This is the beginning of a fascist accumulation of power within the executive branch. And it's not something I'm saying lightly. It's not a joke. This has never happened before in American history. We have never had a president ask the Senate for recess appointments for any reason except for true national emergencies. It's never happened. And we're all just sitting here like, oh, it's normal. Oh, the American people really were that mad about milk prices. No, they didn't know the consequences. They didn't understand what they were voting for. No one told them. We tried to tell them. The media tried to tell them. They didn't listen. They didn't believe it. And they're not going to believe it until they start to see it.